Hello everyone, and welcome back to Springrealms, our wonderful little Patron server, although this room is definitely anything but small. So, with me today I actually have Aeneas, an unusual occurrence.
Hello.
Indeed. Yep, there they are. So Aeneas, our god of motion, has been working on getting these walls fully fleshed out, or, well, I guess more specifically I guess they're more boned out than fleshed, but either way. Very nice wall. And also, we have a ton of witches around here. I just need to disable, like, the librarian spawning around here for a bit, because it's a little... unless I actually tell these things to not target people who are in creative mode, which is a bit of a hassle, they are kind of a pest.
They'll just suddenly start slowing you while you're trying to build and, like,
Yeah,
look at what
slowing
you're
you
working
or
on, and
flying
it's like,
you
what
up,
are
or
you doing?
Summoning skeletons, or just lightning bolts. Which I evidently need to tweak because they keep setting themselves on fire. But on the word of magic, we have determined what the new boss is. Of course, it's the Grand Archivist, but now I know it's going to be a Wither, which kind of makes sense, I guess, because like the special item you get from this dungeon is like the star, isn't it? So I guess it makes sense it would come from a Wither. But I did have to do some testing to make sure it wouldn't just destroy all of the pillars and all of the like regen circuits inside of them, because that would be awkward. I'll probably make a bit more like hedging just to make sure. Yeah. Yep. But if you come along down under to the bedrock box under here, you can see a wonderful line of dancing armor stands. Because I needed a way to illustrate this a bit better. So, we have along here a main cooldown and a quartet of different, like, cooldowns. So basically what this tries to simulate is the action, like, time of the boss, and then the cooldowns on different abilities. So if you think of, like, a taskbar, a hotbar of, like, 4 different abilities, it can click them so many times in a given period, and it can click each individual one according to a different cooldown. Am I making any sense here?
I mean, you could compare it to, like, every video game where you've got cooldowns on your abilities.
Yeah, so there's, like, the cooldowns on the abilities, and then this is how frequently you can actually trigger any ability, basically. So it can trigger abilities, say, once every 2 seconds or so, and then the different abilities have their own cooldowns. So it goes through, and every time it can trigger an ability, it triggers the first one that has a full cooldown. Which is what we see dancing here. If they are down, that means they've cooled down. Straightforward, I feel. But evidently harder than one might think to actually say. But yeah, so currently this is just running endlessly. What it will eventually be done is that it will actually execute from the dungeon boss itself, so that none of this is doing anything otherwise. Which will be a lot smoother. But the reason that I have to go around this very, very complicated system, firstly, is it's a lot less spammy. Like, I'm using a lot more cooldowns here, but unlike a number of the previous bosses, they don't just randomly chuck out whatever, they actually have to wait before they can do a given thing, which I think is a nice touch. Because it means you don't get the worst possible ability they have 5 times in a row. Being the Grand Archivist, this particular boss has to be worrying about different spells. Unfortunately, I have a rough time thinking up of what kind of weaponizable magical abilities a librarian would have. Because upstairs all the librarians have just stolen spells out of the archive, but the Grand Archivist is for sorting stuff. So, little bit complicated there. So currently I've just looked through our known spellbook and come up with 2 different selections out of the 4 that I need. So first up we have Gravity Well, which is as the spell itself, but creates 3 different wells. The Gravity Well spell creates a temporary object that teleports nearby entities to itself. So, for anyone that's been playing Overwatch, that's basically Zarya's ult. And then we have Null Target, which is from the Aura of Null Target spell, which basically just deletes projectiles within a certain range of the entity. But that again, I think, is another summon
So
object.
much like D.Va's defense matrix.
Exactly. So we've got Zarya, D.Va, and then I need to think of 2 things. Preferably not Pharah, because that will be a massive headache.
I mean, you kind of already did that with the previous boss.
Yes, I guess I did do that with the flying bats, didn't I? The flying TNTs. So, what do we think? The first 2 spells are very... like, one of them is very much a route, I guess we'd call that, but for like 3 different locations. And then the second one is definitely a defensive thing. I think we definitely need things that just straight up kill people. I mean, with the actual equipment that we are currently expecting players to be entering this particular boss encounter with, Wither is probably going to hurt them very badly. But the Wither is always weaker against multiple people, and I just very recently myself murdered a Wither underground using a bow and arrow and a diamond sword. Admittedly, it was an enchanted diamond sword, but nonetheless, I feel like that'll balance out with more people, so consequently we have to worry about that. So, we can't just stick the boss full of different routes and then expect it to be a challenge.
It could be using a splash or chaining potion effect, such as one person gets hit with a long duration of, I don't know, poison, and then if they get too close to another person, it could pass off to them as well, to the other person. Very similar to Thaumcraft's Flux Flu. Just staying away from like fire or explosions, because you don't want to have fire or explosions in a library.
Yes, although the Wither is kind of going to make that slightly unavoidable. So there's one thing that we could potentially weaponize is... yeah, one thing that we could maybe weaponize as like a 5th ability maybe, is to have it spawn some of the lore bats. So it spawns like 3 or 4 different bats. Mind you, this system will still be running even when the boss is around, but 4 bats just like fly out of the Wither and like infect people with lore. That'd be an interesting way to do it. Of course, if we also make some kind of contagious ability, if there's a timer in here that messes up, or an entity just for whatever reason loses its scoreboard values, as seems to be increasingly common, rather annoyingly, then we potentially have a corrupted blood incident on our hands.
And then we could just put in something in a deplague button at spawn.
Yeah, I suppose the easiest way would be to only affect people with that curse if they happen to be within the dungeon, so that's something at least. Probably have to have a deplague button, but any time that we have to like add a debug button like that to a spawn just seems to be a moment where we clearly could have done something better. Anything that breaks the immersion, you know? Obviously it's going to have more health. I don't know how its damage attack attribute is going to be terribly affected if I actually like do anything with it, because I don't know if that affects just its body slam or if it also affects its skulls flying around. Hard to tell. I mean, there's another problem that we have to consider here, which is that the Wither goes after all other entities, not just players, so all of those witches that we have up there are going to be targets as well.
I mean, there could be a thing that when it spawns, it kills all the witches, because that would make a horrifying sound.
Yeah, but they will also naturally spawn either way. We're hijacking natural spawning up there, so we would have to set the flag of denying mob spawning within the dungeon, and then remembered somehow to turn that back on when the boss is dead. Which we can do. I have tested it. We can actually control the region using command blocks, which is a slightly terrifying thought, but so let's see. On spawn kill off librarians and disable mob spawning in dungeon. Or disable mob spawning in dunge. I think that's clear enough.
Yeah, nothing else we can mistake that with.
Yeah. So, once we figured out all the abilities, we then figure out what they all do, and then there's another clarifier I have down here. Skip abilities with no valid targets. So whenever this selects an ability, we need to make sure that it actually doesn't do anything to the cooldowns or any effects if it can't actually find a target. Which is easy enough, because just right at the end we check if we execute from a given target to see if there was one, and then we do that to like set all of these cooldowns again. That's fairly straightforward. So that means we select an ability, and then we only actually reset the cooldowns if the ability would work, which I guess will ultimately result in the boss mashing the button until it finds somebody to hit with it. But that's not as bad, I feel. I mean, in the meantime, all the other cooldowns are counting down as well. So you've been working on the walls. Just flip that on. You've been working on the walls recently, and I've got some of the platforms in. Do you have any ideas what we can put on the platforms?
Well, I was just thinking disjointed, like reading nooks, like a few bookstands, a chair, desk, maybe a few statues, just various things that feel like it was once maybe one cohesive floor and has since broken to pieces, or the pieces come and go. It's kind of like the Hogwarts stairs.
Oh, that is a nice parallel, actually. And we need to make sure that the different zones are passable, but not too passable. Just passable enough for people to think, okay, this can be navigated, but then they realize there are problems the higher up they get. Namely the altitude. And the fact that not everything lines up properly. So currently I've mostly just gotten this section done. I need to make it go higher and further out, but then I will get work done on the other ones. I think I'll give them a bit more body underneath, so that they're not just like one block and then you're dead. Because the wither is going to cause explosions, and that will cause damage, and that will... yeah. So on and so forth kind of thing. But, hooray.
Yeah, and then we're going to end up with someone stuck on like the highest up platform, and then the wither's going to fly up to harass them, and no one else can get there because all the others have been destroyed.
Yeah, that's definitely like not a way to go. I'm sure what will just happen immediately upon people entering this door into this dungeon is that they'll just pull out a stack of dirt or a stack of cobble or something, and they'll just pillar up. And the very first moment that a witch gets remotely close to them, they will regret this action. But I'm sure somebody will do it, because we had that like within the first 5 minutes of the Dungeon of Eranis, because people just pillared up and started building big pathways, or still going along the tree line. The tree line at least I liked, because that was an interesting use of terrain. And I guess I should be thankful that the people who did pillar up at least kept within the altitude of the dungeon. So eventually their big pathways got eaten away. And then there was the Great Fire that Kia said. That was fun. There were still lighting.
To be fair, we were kind of endorsing no one used fire, and then we just suddenly had fire everywhere because they realized, oh wait, fire exists. So that was kind of us bringing it upon ourselves.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I guess that's to be expected when you make a dungeon that's like 90% flammable, but that's just sort of the things we have to consider when we're creating basically an open world dungeon system like this. If players can go from anywhere to any dungeon, they can bring anything from anywhere to any dungeon. So, lava, if it were renewable, and flint and steel, because it definitely is. Currently we don't have a lava problem, so there's that. I suppose we could have a lava problem, but it's really tricky for anyone to try and sneak it out of, say, the Dungeon of Moriboga. So there's that. But let me see if I... /summon blip. There we go. And no gravity and no AI. Hopefully this works. There he is. So, ideally, like, in an ideal world, if we possibly could, this guy would be, like, a towering, flowy robe, grim reaper-y kind of sort of folk. But we work with what we got, and my two main options for this particular dungeon were the Wither and the Ender Dragon. And the Ender Dragon has a lot of potential for a dungeon boss, especially with recent changes to it. But the big problem I have with it is that every single time it dies, it creates a portal to the end where it died. Which... that's a pain. Especially with the way the regen system works. I would basically need to force the entire area that the dragon could be in to regen 100% when it died, and that's a pain in and of itself. But then there's also the fact that the dragon passes through terrain. So I can't keep it constrained to a dungeon that way. So, Dragon is a pain in the butt. But the Wither is nice, he's just sort of unintimidating, I think, at this stage. He tries to be spooky, but I think after I designed the Uber Vidron for Yogg Dwarves, the Wither just became this sort of goofy thing to me.
Yeah, it just got demoted to the goofy kid on the block.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I can, like, remodel him at least so he resembles something a bit more scary, but that's a whole other can of worms. And that is kind of one of the things that Dave wants to get into. Remodeling blocks using resource packs and stuff. I don't know if you can remodel mobs, but that would be glorious.
Yes, you can, but you can't really... there's only so much you can do.
I could at least give him a pair of arms.
I'm
I mean, he's
not
got
sure
half
the
a
arms are
ribcage
possible.
Yeah, he's got like half a rib cage down here. He might as well have some arms. Let's kill at E type equals Uber boss. Or equals 10. There we go. Lunk. Dip. And of course I'm gonna have to give him his own special loot table, because currently he just, as standard, drops a regular old Neverstar, which he shouldn't, but no one can summon him yet, so that's fine. Grand concerns about things. And, oh yeah, that's something else I need to fix over there. I've just noticed one of the librarians getting tossed up and taking damage from the float points. I'm not sure if that's a bug or a feature, though. Like, should they be affected by the levitation? They logically should be, but the trouble is they don't use it for anything, they just fly up and get hurt a little bit. Whoop, I've been hit by the floaty. So, this I have realized has a much higher altitude than I thought it would. Because I hit the ceiling here. If anybody gets hit by this, they had better pray that there's a decently, like, safe roof above them. Because otherwise they are dead.
Well,
they are straight
looks
dead.
like I'll need to be doing roof later on. Or roof, if you excuse me, this huge debate about how I pronounce that.
Yeah, pronunciation discourse is a thing. I think it's just a matter of having enough, like, platforms around so that there's a decent chance you can at least navigate to one of them on your way up. At least then you can potentially save yourself. If you have a bucket of water, obviously, that'll help a lot. But all else fails, I guess you can just aim for the fountain, but of course that means that you're safe, but you're now back on ground level, so you have to climb all the way back up. Which, I think that's a decent compromise.
I might think about adding something to the ceiling, though, because it is just flat, white, one material.
Well, you're not going to be able to
Just
see it most
realized
of the time, so there's that.
True.
The main thing that I'm concerned about with the ceiling is the attic. Because the attic is a big open space where things spawn, but there's nothing here currently except the regen circuits. But I just know there's going to be people in here. Like, there's no way we can build this kind of dungeon with this kind of volume of space and expect people to just not come up here. So I don't know what to put up here though. Like, there's no reason for there to be anything up here. Like, we've got this colossal space beneath us if we want to store books. What would be up here?
Roof access.
Roof access to the flat for the pretty much all flying enabled bosses, like all the flying enabled gods and stuff. Like, we can fly. Surely they could fly. I mean, admittedly, you had to invent motion for them to do more or less anything, I imagine, but nonetheless.
Bit of a combination effort between me and Phoenix.
True, true. Maybe we can put something up there like a bridge club or something, I don't know. Oh, actually, there's a fort. Placitos was one of the three, wasn't he? Well, they, I should say.
Yes.
So we could put, like, a conspiracy wall up there. So, like, Placitos has the vision, is hastily trying to scribble things down, but can't have it be all in the open because people already think that the idea is, for want of a more sensitive statement, crazy. So, that'd be interesting to have up there. So people dig down through here, as they inevitably will, and then they just get into this area that's full of, like, red wool tying together different dialogue and different diagrams and signs and stuff. That'd be cool. That's an idea.
I can see so much fun with that.
Yeah. It's just a matter of whether we can get it all done before the opening in about a week. So, with that, I guess we better get back to work. So, from the god of myths and hoaxes and the god of motion, hope you've all enjoyed, and we'll catch you all next time.